So I want to respond. I talked about this many times in the past about Irish neutrality, and it's something that it's very in the core of the Irish state in not getting involved in any international conflicts or wars or whatever. And that's a threat at the moment by these politicians in the Dáil. Now, as you know, during the Second World War, take for example, Ireland was neutral. Even there was an emergency powers obviously in place. For the Second World War, Ireland wasn't involved. Obviously there was people who joined the British Army from Ireland, but they wouldn't fight for Ireland. In the name of Ireland, if that makes sense. That Ireland wasn't involved with the Second World War. So Ireland has a long standing of neutrality, not getting involved. And I have to say to Simon Coveney and Leo, he what they look like good little children over in Brussels, with Ursula von der Leyen, the rest that abandoned, more or less saying we're not neutral, Ireland's not neutral. So if it's a conflict or anything, that we're going to send hundreds of young Irish people to die over in Europe. So that's more or less what they said. In the Dáil, Leo said. Which is something that's outrageous because Ireland is neutral. Whatever about peacekeeping and things that send in peacekeeping missions, humanitarian missions, obviously Ireland has a long standing role in that. 60 years of peacekeeping, more than any other European country, of going and peacekeeping, you're trying to keep the peace in other countries. And obviously that's very important too. But this is the other thing, that, as JFK said when he came to Ireland, Ireland has one thing that really it shines, I suppose, for the world, and that is peace. Protecting peace, upholding peace. So that's what Ireland has to do, and not get involved. Like what Leo was saying is more or less gearing up for to send more people to die over in Europe. That's more or less what he wants to do in his mind and in Simon Coveney's mind. So they should be saying that Irish neutrality is the first thing, and it basically should be in the constitution. It kind of is there. That Ireland shouldn't get involved. Which is why Ireland's not involved in NATO, because that's obviously a military alliance. Even though it's a defensive military alliance, it's still a military alliance, and Ireland has no role to play in a military alliance or in the European army or anything like that. Ireland doesn't have a role in that. Ireland shouldn't have a role in that, even though these criminals in the Dáil will have other things to say about it. But this is the thing. Obviously, Ireland should obviously say to Russia and to Ukraine, to talk, to how to make peace. Obviously, that's what Ireland should the main voice in the world should be in the UN Security Council. That should be Ireland's main role at the moment, using its voice to call for peace, and to try and get peace, instead of saying no, we're not neutral in X, Y, and Z. That's an outrageous statement for Leo to say, and Simon Coveney, outrageous. Particularly again, as you see in the Second World War, even though Dublin was bombed at one stage, as I said, by mistake, by the German Luftwaffe, we still remain neutral. And obviously it was emergency powers next one said. But this is the thing, and I say this, and again, it is fight for the here. Leo saying this, I'm not going to lie to you, because he's more or less a suggestion. If the European Union goes to war with Russia, or if the NATO goes to war, we're going to send hundreds of thousands of young people to die over in Europe. For basically nothing. Basically we're going to send them for nothing. Because as I said, from the start of the state, Ireland's been neutral, hasn't done. The only country really has been any kind of military conflict before even the foundation of the state was the British. That's really the only country Ireland wasn't involved in anything else, to be totally honest. Like, we were occupied for 800 years, we had very little to do with anything. But yeah, this is again, I can't stress it enough that should be the force for taking. And I would say that to if you local TD Simon Coveney or Micheál Martin or government minister, I would say that you don't want them to make a mockery of Irish neutrality. We want to be neutral. We don't want to be getting involved in conflicts. We don't want to be bombed in this country. We don't want to be have invaders come to this country, because we decided to take the part of the European Union and follow the European Union and be good little children and follow whatever they say. And obviously, as you see, Switzerland took a stand for the first time in a long time. Switzerland's been neutral for hundreds of years. It's opposing sanctions on Russia. So that's the first. But expelling the Russian ambassador, that's another thing too. Just to briefly talk about that. I suppose at the end of the day, during the Second World War, the Axis ambassador, Germany and Italy, had the embassies. The embassies were still open in Dublin during the Second World War, along with the Allied embassies. So basically, it was full neutrality. Basically, it wouldn't favour on both. They wouldn't favour on one side. So yeah, I don't know. I don't like the Russian ambassador, but totally honest, I think he's it's a bit snotty, to be totally honest. I'm not going to say anything else. But I do think they're doing something else in the Russian embassy, because there's a big embassy in Dublin for no reason. But there's something else behind it. But yeah, it's entirely up to the government. But I would say it's probably best not to expel them, just because to keep firm neutrality, we should have the Ukrainian ambassador here. Obviously, of course, the Ukraine has done nothing wrong, but along with the Russian ambassador, because that's full neutrality, not taking one side. But maybe you can be sympathetic, obviously, to Ukraine. Of course, you have to be with what's happening with them. But at the same time, you have to keep the Russian ambassador here and the Russian embassy here, because that's full neutrality. You're not taking one side, if that makes any sense. And that's what neutrality means. You can obviously speak and say, what's happening, denounce the war and things like that. And obviously Ireland's role is that on the UN Security Council. Ireland has a role to play on that, in denouncing war and calling for peace. But yeah, I'm just saying, and I can't emphasise this enough, because again, it's very, very frightening to hear what Leo and Simon Coveney had to say. Because they're not speaking in you and I's name. I don't think there's anybody. I've seen a few people say Ireland should send troops over to die in Ukraine. More Irish troops. And again, one more thing actually, speaking of. Again, it's not Ireland's war. Ukraine, unfortunately, has to fight it themselves. We're not going to send any young people over to die. In Ukraine, again, we haven't got the army, we haven't got the arms to do it. We're not a country of military strength, in other words. Like, US can do it, the UK can do it. Ireland doesn't have the means of military production to fight, to send troops to Ukraine. Let's be fair now, but Ireland isn't a big military power that has thousands and thousands of troops. We barely have 8,000, we can barely keep 8,000. We used to have 10,000, now it's 8,000 in a few years, reduced by 2,000. This is the next thing. This is to do with Barry Cowan. No, not Barry Cowan. The former army ranger that's a TD now. Now I just have to say, I disagree with what he has to say about sending anti-tank weapons. Ireland has some anti-tank weapons in the Irish army, to send them to Europe, to give them to the Ukrainians. To be neutral, you can't give arms. That's what I'm trying to say. To be neutral, you can't give arms or any kind of military material. And that's for neutrality. But at the same time, I say to Brian Coward, I'm sure he knows himself, Ireland needs every gun it can keep. Because as you know, we need every bit of gun and every bit of military equipment we hear in this state, in the country, because we haven't got much military equipment for a start. It's okay for the UK and France and Germany and the Netherlands. They all have big military industries. They can get, obviously, part of NATO too, they can get weapons and things like that. Ireland, has to work with what it has, and it's very little that they have at the moment. So even if we said 10, we need them 10 to be better off in this state, defending this state, to be used for the defence, God forbid, if anything ever happened in this state, than giving it to another country. Because again, it's up to the United States. The United States have a big war industry. UK, France, it's up to them. It's not up to Ireland to be given arms. And again, that's going above the neutrality line, if that makes any sense. And of course, I support Ukraine. Before I say anything else, of course I support it. It's a terrible situation. It shouldn't have been allowed to happen, that's what I say. But there's nothing really that Ireland can do. Ireland obviously can speak out against the course, but there's nothing militarily means or getting involved physically. Maybe you can go and peacekeep in a year's time, maybe, and try and keep the peace. Maybe do humanitarian missions. Of course, if that's necessary, of course that'll be okay, as long as it doesn't put any troops in our Irish troops at risk. But yeah, that's probably in the future to come. We wait and see. We'll come to that one. We'll come to it. But but I say that straight, and again, that has to go through. That has to go straight through all the TDs' heads, that they have to get into their head that giving arms or getting involved in any other way is going above the neutrality of Ireland and putting Ireland at risk. Because again, we haven't got the military to defend the state, let alone send troops to another country. So we haven't got the military, we have to be honest with it. Now again, this is the last point to raise. We should increase the army, because again, we're going into certain times. I would say we need nearly probably 50,000 troops compared to what we have is 8,000. I say we need 50,000 to have a hope on the ground to defend the state, and obviously increase the number in the navy too. But I would say we need 50,000 ground troops. The same as during the Second World War, we had 200,000 troops in reserve and full-time troops, obviously, because there was a war going on. But we're going into uncertain times, so it is needed that we increase the number into the defence forces in Ireland. Full time troops, not with service, but full time troops. Because 8,000 is not going to cut it. Let's be fair. So we do need that. Even if we increase it up to 15,000, that would be not the ideal thing, but 15,000 would be better than nothing that we're working with at the moment. 15,000, 20,000, but I say 50,000 would be the ideal amount. Because again, there's a lot of people who would love to join the army, but it's the money and the resources that's in the army that's preventing them. But yeah, that's just my opinion. So hopefully they do take that, because again, it's all about the defence of the state at the end of the day. And we have to think about that. Thank you.